Hey friends. So I I had a kind of a cool experience yesterday. I was listening to a book called Positive Discipline, which I've spoken about before on this post. It's a book about creating essentially a nurturing and healthy environment for children that involves structure and boundaries, and that doesn't lapse into either kind of permissiveness or, on the other hand, a kind of disciplinarian approach, neither of which is really that effective. And it's about a whole bunch of things and a whole ton of elements of how that all works. It's fascinating. But something jumped out at me that was actually almost eerie how it struck me, because this is something that I have already been working on in my teaching work, especially with clients and coaching clients, and to some degree with piano students and other students. The phenomenon that they were talking about in the book is one that I had independently just observed and kind of figured out one day for myself, slightly differently and not quite as structured as the way that they describe it in the book. And what it is, I realize I'm talking all about it without telling you what it is. Essentially, what the book was saying is, as a parent, their children will adopt what are called mistaken goals. And mistaken goals are called mistaken goals because they are erroneous and essentially ineffective ways of trying to get belonging and significance. And so, in other words, because obviously, not all goals are mistaken. But these are sort of like well-established approaches that people fall into as children because they seem to offer some way of getting what we need. And it's interesting, the sort of like founder of this theory, I forget his name now, but he was quoted as saying, people would ask him, well, how can you, kids are so different. There's this infinite variety of children and backgrounds and personalities. How can you keep putting them into these 4 little boxes, the 4 mistaken goals, which if I can remember them, I'll tell you. But the guy goes, I don't put the kids there. I keep finding them there. Essentially saying these 4 ways of coping are, I'm not imposing this. I just keep observing people attempting in these various ways to get something that ultimately can't be gotten that way. And the mistaken goals are, let me see if I can get this right. One of them is undue attention. So in other words, a child needs not just an appropriate and proportionate and a normal amount of attention, but an undue amount of attention. In other words, they won't let the adult's attention ever waver from them. Revenge is another one. Power is another one. If they feel that the adult has power over them, they want to have power. Or essentially hopelessness. I forget what they call it, but it's basically inadequacy, assumed inadequacy. So these are the 4 states that we can find children in when they're not getting what they need, or when their lives are not structured to get what they need. And then they will go about trying to accomplish. They'll try to redress the situation and find belonging, find significance, either by getting undue attention for themselves, getting power, inappropriate kinds of power. Not because of course everybody, the use of power and the sort of distribution of power can be healthy, and power can be put to constructive uses. But when it's not, that's a condition that's called the power condition of this particular theory. Revenge, obvious, and then assumed inadequacy, and these four goals / conditions result in certain behaviors. And as the adult, I'm getting around to telling you why this book was so inspiring to me. As adults, as the parents, our own emotions in a certain situation will tell us which of the mistaken goals the child might be going for, and therefore which of the kind of deficits they may have. And the obvious, the whole point of information like this in the context of a book like Positive Discipline is to be able to understand not that the behavior is just the front surface layer of an attempt to get something that's not actually attainable. That's why it's a mistaken goal. That even if they accomplish that goal, it doesn't get them what they really are looking for. And the behavior that's designed to get them there is just the very tip of the iceberg. And if we can see that behavior and know, oh, this is behavior that's going for this mistaken goal because there's this underlying condition underneath, we as the parent, the loving, I'll do anything for my child parent, can, instead of just responding to the behavior and needing to feel like we need to either shut the behavior down or redirect them into more positive behavior, which of course we do want to do, but instead of just doing that on the surface level, we can actually see through what's going on there, identify what that behavior is designed to accomplish. From there, identify what may be going on underneath and what may be causing the child to look for this mistaken goal, and hopefully create a connection, affirm and encourage that, give them what they really need as a way of not combating the behavior, but actually just drawing all the power out of it. It's almost like if you can solve the underlying issue, both the mistaken goal and the behavior drop away. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Our own emotions in a situation, as the parent, will tell us what the child's mistaken goal is if we don't confuse our own emotion for what is actually happening in the situation. So in other words, let's say, like for one of the examples is a child who wants undue attention is likely to ask for our attention and continually grab for our attention in a way that we find annoying. Annoyance or guilt is one of the ways that we kind of respond to having our attention constantly grabbed. Well, if I don't just dismiss the behavior and say, well, you need to just not be so annoying, right? That would be a surface level response. But if I can go, I'm feeling annoyance at this, that means the attention requested is not in proportion to what's normal. It's not. It doesn't feel like this is happening in a kind of healthy, breathable, spacious space. It's happening in a kind of overly demanding way. What does that mean if annoyance tells me that we're talking about undue attention, and that undue attention is something that where we kind of want to redress, we want to get underneath that and figure out, okay, well, where is that sense of I constantly need to have the attention on me or else I don't have belonging and significance? Where does that come from? How can we offer the child a way of getting attention, but in a productive and contributing way, as opposed to an extractive and kind of demanding way? But we have to be able to first feel our own emotion and then not just react out of it. We need to be able to interpret it, understand what it means in the context of the situation and what it likely means about what's under the surface of this child. Whatever may be on the surface, what's going on underneath is something different. Use our own emotions as a kind of like diagnostic tool to see that and then work with the deeper issue. This is what I've been saying and doing in my coaching for about a year now. At some point I figured out when I'm sitting in these calls, I'll have an emotional response when a student or a client, says something, does something, as we get into the conversation about where they're at and what they're working on, what they're struggling with, blah blah blah. I'll sometimes have an emotional response. I'll feel something in myself, and I've learned that the client is often completely unconsciously sending that emotion out, like almost like it's a telegram. It's not being spoken about. It is not it's not in the frame. It's not in the room as something that we're looking at or identifying, but it is being transmitted. And if I can pick up on that, it's like I can be I become borderline psychic, because I can pick up on a wavelength and something that's going on that is not being spoken about and that may be actually being deliberately, again, it's kind of probably subconsciously, but deliberately suppressed. But now I have access to it because my own emotion told me that. Now I can work with that person. Now I can get underneath what might be causing that in them. And where this all has taken me in the last day or so, since I've been really kind of listening, when this chapter in the book hit, and I was like, whoa, this is interesting. It's so much like what I'm doing in my client work. I was like, one of the things that really hit home for me is our emotions are like antennae. Our emotions are like these antennae that go out into the universe, and we can pick up vast amounts of information. We can actually, it's like they're like telescopes that see inside other people, that see inside other contexts. But in order to use them that way, we have to not just react to them. We can't take our emotion that we feel and think, this is my emotion that I'm feeling, so I need to do something out of that emotion. If we do that, we're actually like going from having antennae that reach out into the world and give us the opportunity to direct our focus out. I mean, think about how far you can radiate out with your awareness if your emotions, relative to any human being you contact, if you're aware that your own emotions in relationship to someone else are like a cockpit of a plane with flashing lights and screens and schematics and information and diagnostic blah blah blah, constant streams of information flowing in from all sides, that gives us a massively expanded perspective and a massively powerful instrument to engage in the world with. But as soon as I make my emotions about me and what I'm feeling is about me and I want to do something to stop feeling it, generally I'm talking about, the kind of unpleasant emotions, not like the joyous bliss of being. We're talking about emotions with some charge to them. Very quickly, it's like we shut that. If we make it about ourselves, it's like we cut all those lines, we cut all that connection, and now I'm just feeling what I'm feeling, and I'm kind of having an emotional experience, as opposed to having an existentially expansive experience and learning and receiving. It cuts off all that information, and it just kind of, this is what hit home for me, is just that if we can learn to tolerate and sit with our emotions in the way that we do in meditation, when we're in a meditative practice, we're not just going to like feel an emotion and then get up off the cushion and walk away and go act on the emotion. The practice is to register the emotion and observe it and acknowledge it, know that it's there. But if we can, just observe it until it feels like it can drift away, and we bring our attention back to the practice. If we can do that, we become all powerful. We become massively psychically powerful, because we have this instrument, this incredible instrument that will tell us so much about the world and so much about other people, and we can then be of service in a whole new way. So that's what was kind of coming home to me. It was interesting how much this parenting book, and interestingly, I'm way better at employing this method with my clients than as a parent. As a parent, I'm a little closer to the programming. So it was really nice to get this description from the book, and to have it kind of have the reminder that this is also something that is highly relevant to working with a child. So anyway, that's kind of what showed up in the last day or so. Thanks for watching, people. All the love in the world. Appreciate you. Have a lovely day. I will see you tomorrow.